music serves as a universal language that connects people on a profound, intangible level. But how do musicians do this? I'm Warren Buchholz, Jazz Brand Manager at WUSF, and I'm on a mission to find out. Meet Ross Strauser. He is a saxophonist, composer, and educator who serves on the music faculties at University of South Florida and Hillsborough Community College. He's in process of creating his second album, Going to the Sun, a 15-movement suite of original works inspired by the Glacier National Park. He recently sat down with me and Adam Darbyshire in the WUSF studio, where we got to talk about his work and what inspires him. I hope you enjoy. All right. Well, thanks, Ross, for being here in the studio. We have Adam Darbyshire with us, joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. So first question I always like to ask is, who inspired you to want to get into music?
Well, I think the first person that really inspired me, I remember I think I was in third or fourth grade, and I'm from a small town in Montana. And I had been interested in jazz and the saxophone a little bit. And there was this guy from Seattle, Floyd Standifer, that brought his jazz quartet to Whitefish, my hometown. And I just fell in love with the saxophone listening to this guy play. I bought his CD my parents bought the CD for me, and I just listened to it until it was worn out pretty much. And when I first got my tenor saxophone, I transcribed his solo on this tune, Satin Doll. And ever since then, I've gotten to know and love more players, but I didn't really ever consider music as a career until probably my junior or senior year of high school. And the thing that did that for me, really made me want to go into music, was I actually went to Seattle to see Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock play a duo concert together. Yeah. And not only was the concert life-changing, but I actually got to meet Chick and Herbie.
What?
And yeah, pretty briefly. But, I asked, the question I asked them is what's one piece of advice that you'd give to a young jazz musician that's considering this as a career? And they were both, Herbie straight up said, just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's something along those lines. And they were both just the things that they had to say. I was like, yep, this is what I want to do. So that's kind of how it got started, I think.
And you ended up going to University of Montana?
Yep, that's right.
What was that experience like?
It was really cool. I had kind of been checking out some other schools, but they host a jazz festival every spring called the Buddy DeFranco Jazz Festival. Okay. And I got to attend that when I was in high school. And I heard their top jazz band play, and I was like, wow, this is it's a really good program, and it's in state, so, not too far from home. So part of it was just kind of a comfort thing for me, being close to my family and stuff, but also the program is just, for such a small school, it's a really killing program. And there's actually a really decent jazz scene in Missoula. So as I kind of developed my playing a little bit, there were actually a lot of opportunities for us to go out and play gigs around town. And the hipsters love jazz for whatever reason. So it was cool because, we could play for the typical kind of old person jazz crowd at certain venues. And then other venues, it would be a ton of young people that would come out and watch. So that it was a really, really cool experience overall, and just a really, great professors, great program.
I would never have expected Missoula to be such a jazz place. Do you happen to know why?
I think it's just part of it is the university. I think just because there's so many kids that go there and want to study music and jazz. So we all got out and played in the community. But I think just in Montana in general, there's a lot of people that would, they move there from all over the country just because they like the vibe and the scenery and everything. So, we would get people like Lauren Stillman, for example, who's a wonderful, wonderful New York saxophonist. Like just his technique on the instrument is some of the best I've ever heard. He ended up moving out there because his wife was from there originally, so I got to study with him. And there's just a handful of people like that. Erica von Kleist being another one who moved out there from New York that I studied with. And so I think that was a lot of it, is there were just some really great players that came out there just because they wanted to be in Montana. So, yeah.
Very cool. And you play not just saxophone, you also do bass. Is that correct?
Oh, I just started that like a week ago just for fun. Yeah. So that's one of my things, music for me, it's not, just my career. It's there's so many different like hobbies and passions that I have within the umbrella of music. And one of those is just getting my hands on other instruments and learning how they work. And especially for me as a composer, it's actually really beneficial to learn how a bass works or how a guitar works. So when you write for those whatever instrument, when you write for those instruments, you have a much better understanding of like, what the instrument is capable of and maybe what it's not so capable of. So, that's one thing that I really love, is just like picking up new instruments and trying to at least learn a little bit about them. So, yeah.
What made you choose Tampa, St. Pete to come here, reside, teach?
Yeah. The big thing, it was when I was, kind of shopping around for grad schools, I wanted to study jazz composition. And I think I applied to like maybe 5 or 6 schools total. Tampa, USF was pretty much my top choice because of Chuck Owen. I remember one of my professors told me to check out his music, and I did, and I was blown away when I started listening to his music, and I said, that's the guy I want to study with. And of course, there are such a number of other great composers that I could have gone and studied with, but USF ended up having a really good deal as far as assistantships and tuition waivers and stuff. And I loved when I came down here to audition at USF. I kind of fell in love with the School of Music and all the people that I would potentially be getting to work with. Another one being Jack Wilkins, of course, who just retired. And so that's kind of what did it for me. And I'm really glad I made that decision, because the community here is awesome. And I've been really fortunate to have a lot of really great opportunities kind of coming straight out of grad school. Chuck had just retired, and then Jack retired last year. So it was like, they were kind of looking for people to fill in the gaps that these guys left. And, obviously both of them had some huge shoes to fill. And, so there's a number of other adjunct faculty that kind of came in and started teaching the classes that those guys had. And then a couple of years ago, there was also a job opening at Hillsborough Community College. It started out, I was just going to be running the jazz band. And then they started asking me to teach like music theory and ear training and things, and saxophone there. So it's just been really amazing. And I honestly, I wouldn't rather be doing anything else. I kind of love the adjunct work because it's really flexible, and I still have time to spend on all my creative endeavors as well. So I didn't necessarily have plans to stay in Tampa after grad school, but there were just so many doors that kind of opened after I graduated that it was, hard not to stay.
Do you have any memorable experiences from your time working as an adjunct, either at USF or HCC?
Yeah, I mean, one of the greatest thrills for me, honestly, is I run the second jazz band here at USF, and when I actually started directing that band, I think it was halfway through my first year as a grad student. So I'm going on like 4.5 years of running that band now. And I just love it more than anything. Like it's so cool to see how that band has developed over the time that I've been here, because, it kind of started out, we were coming out of COVID. Like it was really hard to do like real rehearsals and all that stuff. And, it's like they weren't playing bad by any means, but it's like, okay, this has room to improve. And I swear every semester that goes by, that band gets better and better. And for me, it's so cool to see how that develops. I think one of the other highlights is getting to work with Jazz Ensemble One often. I end up kind of using them as a workshop band for my compositions. So I'll bring in a new chart and have them either read it, or a lot of times Tom Brantley, the director, ends up wanting to perform it. But that's really cool and really helpful for me, because I get to kind of workshop new compositions before I bring them into my professional band. So those are kind of some of the things that really I love about the work. And then, of course, my other favorite thing is teaching the composition class, because that's kind of where I live most of the time. So, yeah.
The first jazz band that you've been with, you've overseen for like 4.5, 5 years now. Can you tell me more about that dynamic and kind of what they play? Where do they play? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So we do weekly rehearsals just in the jazz rehearsal room at USF. And my whole kind of goal with them is to develop a really wide range of playing ability, as in, usually at the beginning, like in the fall of the semester, I'll program like really traditional straight ahead jazz charts. So things from like the Ellington book, the Basie book, the Oliver Nelson book. And then as we progress throughout the year, by the end of this second semester, I have them playing like really challenging modern big band charts. Some of them have been composed, within the past 5 years. So I kind of try and get them to the point where it's like, they can play well in all these different jazz styles. And, one thing I've learned is that they really, really enjoy the challenging music more, I think, than the really just like straight ahead kind of simple music. First of all, because it's really cool and modern, but I think it's
fun.
Yeah, and it's fun. They really enjoy the challenge of that. And one of my greatest joys, I think, as an educator is like seeing the aha moment when they like finally figure out how the music is actually supposed to sound. And then they do it, and it's just like, everything comes together, and they're actually playing rather than like, reading and kind of fumbling through it still. So,
and it's really rewarding, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like I said earlier, I wouldn't rather be doing anything else, because it's just, it really brings me a lot of joy. And I am so lucky, because I think there's not a lot of people in the world that can say that they love what they do, like almost 100% of the time,
Adam, you're a student currently. What's been your experience?
Well, I've been a part of Ross's composition class, and it's been a journey. Learned a lot about, like he was talking about with the older stuff, Duke Ellington, Count Basie, and how that's developed into a lot of the modern stuff, like Maria Schneider, Chuck Owen, and even Ross. I'm actually wondering, Ross, so you've obviously come a long way in your composition journey. I'm wondering, how has your approach to writing and composition changed throughout it?
Oh yeah, that's a good question, and a hard question, because when I started out, before I started studying with Chuck, I never really had any formal training. A lot of it would just be like I would listen to jazz orchestra music that I liked and kind of try and imitate it. as a composer, but I just didn't know a lot about like the technical side of writing for a big band, because there is a lot that like goes into that, you know, you may have a good foundation as a composer. Like you might be able to write really nice melodies and chord progressions and orchestrate that for like a small group. When you have, 18 plus musicians that you're dealing with, it becomes a whole different story. So I remember really specifically my very first lesson with Chuck. I showed him a chart that I had been working on that was kind of like in the style of Thad Jones. And he took one look at my brass voicings and he goes, "That's not going to fly." Like those are his exact words. And so, he had me doing, for the first semester I studied with him, it was just like intense score study every week. And like, he'd be like, "You're going to write like 3 compositions like he was really hard on me that first semester. But I learned more in, 4 months than I did in 4 years of just trying to do it on my own. And then, after that just really intense study and immersing myself in the music and the scores, I started, I think it was the summer after my first year, I set a goal of writing 5 full charts over the summer. And I did. And that I think probably 4 out of the 5 of those ended up being on my first album. So, that being said, as far as the development is concerned, like all of those charts were like almost assignments in a way to myself, where I was like, okay, I'm going to write a ballad, a waltz, of, a modern straight eighth chart, like just, have like a collection of charts in a bunch of different styles that like kind of showcases, that I can write in different styles type of thing. After that album was completed, I kind of made another straightforward decision about what I wanted to do next. And that was to challenge myself to write a suite of music rather than like, here's all my examples of different styles that I can write in. And not that this suite it has vastly different styles in it, but they're all kind of connected in a way. So I felt like that was kind of the next step for me, was to challenge myself to write a really huge work like that. So I think in doing that, I discovered a lot about, what it means to actually develop a piece of music. Like, and I always, in the writing process of the suite, I kept thinking like, how many different twists and turns can I put in each movement and still have it like all connect back together? So I think a lot of that was experimental for me, rather than like the stuff that I wrote previously, where it's, really kind of more straightforward. Every composition feels like, a complete composition that doesn't have too many like, left turns in it or anything. So I think within doing kind of that experimentation, I'm actually ended up being really proud of kind of the final product, which we're actually recording starting next week.
Cool.
So
very cool.
Yeah.
Before we get to that, your first album, Endless Ties.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about that album?
Yeah. So kind of like I said, that was just a collection of charts in different styles. And I never intended, when I was writing the music, my original intention wasn't ever to form a band and record. By the time I finished grad school, though, I was like, wow, I have all these charts. What am I going to do now? Like, do I try and get them published? Do I try and sell them to high school? Like, what do I do? And I had some friends and colleagues say, well, you should get them recorded, get a band together and record them. And, I was like, oh, great, silly. I was like, oh, great idea. Like that'll be easy, and it was a huge learning experience. You have no idea, like, I think people, at least musicians, have a general idea of the amount of time it takes to create a big band record, but you don't really realize it until you're doing it. So I think in a way I kind of ended up putting the cart before the horse and just being like, okay, let's do this. And people don't realize it's a lot of fundraising. The compositions might be done and dusted, but it's like fundraising. It's putting a band together, 8 months in advance, because it's, as you guys know, it's nearly impossible to even get 4 musicians in a room at the same time, let alone 18. So a lot of it was just like, the planning of like making calls and being like, okay, this person can't do it. Who can I call next? And it ended up being just a really wonderful band. A lot of like USF faculty members such as Jack Wilkins, Tom Brantley, Simon Lasky, Jay Coble. And then there's several people that I had never met that just got recommended to me. I remember I pretty much everyone that I called was like, first call, they said yes. But I had a really tough time with my woodwind section for whatever reason. So I ended up bringing in a couple folks from Orlando to play. But it ended up being a really wonderful band. And I have to talk about Aaron West, too. He plays second woodwind in my band, but he also did all the editing and, pitch corrections and stuff for that first record. And that process took us probably another 8 months after recording, just because, we were both busy and we have to figure out time when we can work off and on. So just the editing of these types of projects is insane. I just had no clue how long any of this was going to take. So from start to finish, it was about a year, I think, from when we recorded to when we released. And then, of course, we took it to Morris Sound here in Tampa for mixing and mastering. And then there was the whole, distribution thing, like, how do I get this out now? Yeah. So it was really, it was a fun process, but a challenging process of learning about distribution and licensing and how to make CDs and get those produced and everything. And luckily I'm not going to have to deal with as much licensing on this one because it's all original music. I had an arrangement on this first one, so I had to deal with licensing, and arrangement and everything. So overall, just a huge learning experience. So kind of going into this next one, I definitely know what to do, and more importantly, I know what not to do this time. So yeah.
And you have a GoFundMe for this?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's Going to the Sun.
Yeah, and if you can find it, it's on my social media, but also rossstrausermusic.com. It's right on the homepage there.
We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this and all the quality content we offer through WUSF. We need your help, though. Like everything in an overcapitalized society, things cost money to operate, like creating all of the awesome videos and podcasts you see here. Now, I could break out the puppies and play to Sarah McLachlan and you break down and hit donate, but I think we're bigger people here. So, if you're able and willing, please donate your dollars today by visiting wusf.org/donate to get started. Anything helps, and your money goes toward producing all of this content, supporting our community, and a whole lot more. And if enough people do this, maybe these annoying ads will go away. Puppies! Donate today.
Well, so you obviously spend a lot of time working on music that you perform and professional music. But I'm wondering, do you ever write music just for yourself, just for fun?
Yeah, I do actually. Again, like I said, music isn't just a career for me, it's a hobby. So I've actually been dabbling in songwriting the past couple of years as well. And it's nothing that I've ever really put out or even on social media or anything, but I just do it because it's fun. I like the challenge of trying to create lyrics and figure out how to put those over, or, rather, I guess, create a melody and a chord progression that go with lyrics. It's really challenging. My younger sister, who's actually a really great singer-songwriter and lyricist, she has given me kind of a lot of tips and kind of devices to use with that kind of stuff. So yeah, I dabble in that, and just I try and write in as many different genres and styles as I can, even if it's nothing that'll ever see the light of day. I think it's fun for me, and it actually kind of helps develop my chops as a jazz composer in a way, because then it's like I'm not only understanding how jazz music functions, I'm understanding how, pop and rock and, R&B, all that stuff functions as well. And of course, like in my jazz writing, I take a lot of influence from that type of stuff. Like I grew up on a diet of, the Eagles and Paul Simon and, people at America, bands like that, which, it's really great music. Some of that stuff is so simple, but just so beautiful. And I feel like I've ended up taking a lot of my harmonic influence from pop music, in a way where, it's kind of, it might get disguised a little bit. And because instead of, just a bunch of triads, it's like I'm going to use kind of the same chord progression, but add, the seventh and the ninth and other pitches to it that kind of disguise the pop aspect of it, but it's still there, in a lot of it. And then of course I am really recently, inspired by bands like Hiatus. Everyone says Coyote, but I was watching an interview with them and they say it's Coyote. So Hiatus Coyote. Steely Dan, of course, is a massive influence. And then this Armenian pianist, Tigran Hamasyan, as well. He does a lot of like crazy, like mixed meter, like math rock meets like jazz piano type of thing. It's really cool. So a lot, those are kind of the groups that have been, inspirational as well. So, and then I do exercises like, okay, I'm going to write a song like in the style of Steely Dan or Hiatus Coyote or whoever. And that ends up helping my jazz writing. So yeah.
Well, so you talk about people like Hiatus Coyote, kind of taking jazz and jazz harmony in a new direction. And I'm wondering what excites you about this new direction.
Well, with their music, the thing I think I love about their music is, first of all, the grooves that they come up with. The production is just unbelievable. The synths that they use and just everything about it, the production. But their drummer, Perrin Moss, is ridiculous. He's like completely self-taught. And I saw them live last summer, and the stuff he was doing on the drum set was just like blowing my mind. And there's a lot of, really great drummers in the scene that are like looking up to this guy now, who's like a self-taught drummer, just because of the way that he makes everything of theirs feel. And I had no clue what to expect, like going to a live concert of theirs, but it was like better than the records. Perrin Moss, he has this whole setup where he's putting live effects on his drums for every different track. And, same thing with the other members. And it was just mind blowing to see them perform live and just do it like, they're doing it like the record, but they're doing it like themselves live too. So that's just, it's so cool. And it's really inspirational to see, how they do that. Cause I think, if I ever get to a point with my band where, we can perform more regularly, that's the kind of direction I want to go with it, where it's like, we have the ability to like have like the auxiliary instruments and the sound effects, or not really sound effects, but different like patches and stuff that I like to use or am planning on using like when we record. So yeah, it's very inspirational.
So like no two shows are ever the same.
Yeah. As far as I know, like and for me, that's kind of my goal when I perform, whether it's like a jazz quartet or like with my professional band. But I'm interested, just back to Hiatus Coyote, I'm interested to see their next live performance. I'm going again this summer. So I'm going to be interested to see how different it is, or maybe how similar it is to when I saw them previously.
Well, that's kind of the spirit of improvisational music, right?
Yeah.
You try to push yourself every time, like the Miles Davis Quintet, where they would, try and push themselves every single time, do something different.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how I feel as a composer too. Like every time I sit down to write, it's like I keep trying to kind of push the boundaries to a different place every time I write.
What would you say is the most fulfilling part of songwriting or composing for you?
It's getting it in front of the band and like when I work with my professional band, I never treat it as a thing where it's like, okay, this is my music. You need to perform this exactly how it's written on the page. I like to think of it as, this is something that I put down on paper, but this is a collaboration. I brought all these musicians together for a specific reason because they all have amazing skills and they all have different skills. So, I kind of take it's so cool to kind of, know who you're writing for. So I kind of get to take the Ellington approach where it's like, I can be like, oh, Jack Wilkins is going to sound really good soloing on this piece. Or, like for this next record, I'm actually bringing in some guest artists. One of them being Sarah Caswell, the violinist, Grammy nominated violinist from New York. I've been wanting to work with her for a long time, and it finally worked out on this project. So I wrote a piece specifically with her sound in mind, and I'm thinking the whole time, like, Sarah's going to solo on this. How can I make this composition sound good so that she'll sound good on it? But when we get in the studio and stuff, I love hearing suggestions and ideas from everyone in the band. Like my drummer, Rod Alnord, he'll say, well, what if we do this groove this way? Or, take this, maybe in a different direction, or maybe let's throw in a halftime feel here. And I'm like, yeah, let's try it. I love it when the musicians get excited about my music. I guess that's the answer to the question is when I see that light bulb go off and they're actually starting to have fun and get excited about my music. That's the most fulfilling part of being a composer. So, yeah.
How do you know when you're all on the same wavelength as one another, where you don't have to verbally communicate to each other? How do you know when that spark has happened?
For me, it's kind of when it feels like everything is locked in. Like we performed live a couple weeks ago. And this music, is brand new and it's all really challenging. We only had 4 hours to rehearse the day of before the concert. So, everyone's kind of nervous and getting tense and just we're moving really fast through all this music. But, when we got to the concert, there were a lot of incredible moments where everything just fell into place. Everyone was feeling the music the same way. And that's one of the hardest things about performing and recording brand new music is that there's not a whole lot of reference. You can't go listen to a recording of it because it doesn't exist yet and figure out how it's supposed to sound. So, the moment when everyone actually kind of is on that same page and they're thinking, we're all feeling the music the same way. And at the same time, I think that's kind of, those moments where we know it's working, and we know when we performed live the other week, there were great moments that happened where I was like, oh, this is going to sound so awesome in the studio just because of how they were playing it and they were understanding it. So.
And that was your Going to the Sun concert at HCC Ybor?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah.
Right.
So.
What's your timeline for the new album?
Yeah. It's up in the air a little bit still. We're recording next week. We start next Monday. We go in and set up the studio space, and then Tuesday is a full day of rehearsal. Wednesday through Friday is all tracking, and then Saturday is kind of punches and overdubs. So that's the main thing the hurdle that we have to get over now is just getting the initial recording done. And then over the next month or so, June into July, we have instruments that are going to be overdubbed. This is a little bit bigger than my kind of your typical 18-piece group. I've got a mallet player, violinist, accordion, and just some auxiliary percussion instruments. So over that next month, we kind of have to bring those folks in and overdub because we literally don't have enough inputs in the studio to record everyone at the same time. So that'll be kind of the next step. And then, as we go through, my plan is hopefully by October, November to have like the editing and pitch correction done, and then we can kind of move on to mixing. And Aaron West actually has agreed to do all the mixing for me this time, which I'm really excited about on this project, because we are going to have so much more time to just sit and live with the mixes and mess with the mixes and add effects and add synthesizers and whatever we want to this, rather than being like limited with, time and money at like, Morris Sound, for example, even though I love the work those guys do, but obviously this being a self-funded project, I don't really have the budget to, go spend, hours and hours at Morris Sound. So, and Aaron does incredible work. I'm so grateful to have him, helping me mix this project. He's done great work with the Philip Sokolowski trombone project. They're about to put out an album that he did all the mixing for, and it sounds amazing. So I'm really excited for that. And then I hope to release by probably May of next year. So probably another year-long kind of endeavor from start to finish. So,
when you talk about overdubbing, it's kind of the cool thing about technology these days is that you have that accessibility where you all don't have to be in the studio at one time.
Right. Yeah. And it's really useful, especially when you're recording so many musicians at the same time. Like, if the trumpets screw up bar 184, for example, we can literally just go in and we call it a punch, where the rest of the tracks are still there. We just make a new track for the trumpets, and then they punch in the part that they messed up, for example. I'm not picking on the trumpets because they're bad. That was just an example.
Oh, bad trumpets.
Yeah. So that technology, it's really cool. And I love it because like I can experiment. And if I be like, oh, I want to add like, I don't know, like a synthesizer or whatever, like doubling the brass, for example, I can literally do that from home. I can do that at my little home studio. So that's one of the cool things. And I love that, technology, I think, is something that has actually really helped develop modern jazz orchestra music. So I like it. Some people are kind of traditionalists and like, no, it has to be the typical 18-piece setup. No, auxiliary instruments. Some people love to write like that. I love listening to that type of music, but I'm totally like in the camp of let's be like super experimental with this and, make something that no one's heard before, hopefully.
So is there a limit on what you're willing to experiment with? You talk about accordions and synthesizers. Is there going to be a didgeridoo on the third album or something?
Maybe. I don't know. It's just a lot of it has to do with, kind of the influence of the music. So, for example, there's a movement on this next suite that certain sections of it were like inspired by like traditional Brazilian music, and other sections of it were inspired by like Radiohead. This is all within the same composition. So it's like, how can we make this, sound cohesive, but still like, like you can point to it and be like, oh yeah, that sounds like Radiohead. Oh yeah, that sounds like Brazilian choro music. So like I like to do things like, I'm bringing in a cajon player and a pandero player to overdub percussion parts on like kind of the more Brazilian influenced sections. And then like I have some ideas for like synthesizers and stuff like on different sections of it. So the cool thing, like the composition itself, like it totally functions like as a through composed piece of music. But now it's like, I get the light bulbs going off in my head, like, ooh, like what can I add or maybe subtract from this to like make, I still want all these different sounds, but how can I make it sound cohesive when we actually are producing it? So it's like maybe we add synthesizers over the Brazilian inspired part to like tie it together with everything else. So things like that. And then, for example, like there's another piece that's like really inspired by bluegrass music and folk music. So I use instruments like acoustic guitar, and I actually have a little bit of banjo on this record. So things like that, just to kind of, really bring. I want it. One of my favorite things that Jim Morris from Morris Sound said to me once was, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. He was talking about production, of course, but I kind of took
mantra for anything in life.
Yeah,
really.
I took that to heart as a composer. So it's like, if you're going for the bluegrass, folk vibe, why not use bluegrass instruments with a big band? There's no reason why you can't do that, in my opinion. So
how do you avoid trying to force experimentation? Is there ever a point where you feel like you're trying to do too much without trying to make it flow naturally?
I think the experimentation side of things for me comes after the composition is fully written, for the most part. I might have in mind, like, I want accordion on this piece because I like that texture with the trombones or the tenor sax, or the guitar. But then a lot of time, like more recently, especially for this project, what I do is I make demos of them in Logic, so that they're a little bit closer. They're, still not great like MIDI instruments, but they're a lot closer to like my actual vision for the piece, especially when I go in and program the drum set, and I'll lay down bass lines and comp on the piano, and it's like, okay, cool, this is actually how this is supposed to sound. And then I don't think I ever really force that. But I'll have thoughts as I'm like making the demos and be like, ooh, what would happen if we added banjo to this? Or what would happen if we added a synth bass, or whatever the case is. And if it works, great, let's do it on the record. And if it doesn't work, then I crumple that idea up metaphorically and throw it in the trash.
So you have the new album. What else is happening for you in 2025?
The album is honestly the big thing. Other than that, I plan on continuing to write a lot, as much as I can. I'm going to be still teaching at USF and HCC, of course. I think, I think I'm ready to go in a different direction compositionally again. That's kind of my goal, is I want to keep developing things. So I've got a few ideas kind of floating around. One idea I've had is to write music for like a mixed chamber ensemble. That there are kind of some pieces that I've started writing, not with really any specific instrumentation in mind. But when I say mixed chamber ensemble, I'm talking like jazz rhythm section with like clarinet, guitar, accordion, and saxophone and trumpet, for example, just like kind of, things like that I've kind of had rattling around in my brain. And the other thing I really want to try doing is writing for orchestra, or maybe studio orchestra, because those are things that I haven't done a ton of before. So I want to try and kind of push my boundaries as a composer, and maybe sort of start getting away from just the big band idiom, because that's been where I've been living for the past 5 years, or maybe even just write some small group tunes, like small group jazz tunes, because I haven't sat down and done that in God knows how long.
Any summer, fall shows coming up for you?
I don't have any with my band on the calendar yet, but I'm hoping to kind of get some scheduled after we get the album recorded. And particularly, I want to get a big album release concert together for next year. So, and one of the kind of fortunate and unfortunate things is doing a project like this. I've actually kind of taken a step back from the saxophone and gigs for a little bit, just to really go all in on this project. So, my relationship with the saxophone isn't the best right now, but, I'm hoping kind of over the next year to actually get back in the shed and practice a little bit and start playing more gigs than I am currently. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Where can people find you online?
Yeah, rossstrausermusic.com. I've got basically all my information up there, links to all of my streaming profiles. Instagram is just Ross Strauser Music as well. And then Facebook, Ross Strauser. So I post a lot of videos and things on my social media. I'm trying to get better about doing that because, not only are you expected to be a musician, but you're also expected to be a full-time content creator, apparently.
Yeah, it's very annoying.
Yeah.
You got to be everything these days.
I know.
You got to be the promoter. You got to book the shows. You got to produce the music. You got to do the social. It's crazy these days.
You have to be a video editor, a PR person, all that stuff.
Well, cool. Any last questions, thoughts?
No, I'm just excited to see where the Ross Strauser Jazz Orchestra is going to be going.
Nice.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Today's audio was recorded in the WUSF studio. Production assistance by Adam Darbyshire. Edited by Scott Walkler. I'm Warren Buckles, host. Studio Sessions is a product of WUSF and is sponsored by Community Foundation Tampa Bay with support from the Palladium, the Gobia Foundation, and from you. Thank you for your support. Learn more about jazz and Arts Access Florida by visiting our website at wusfjazz.org. Copyright 2025, WUSF.